Hello, I'm Andrew Susskind, and I'm a psychotherapist and author based on the west side of Los Angeles since 1992, specializing in trauma and addictive compulsive behaviors. Welcome to my podcast, named after my recent book and workbook, It's Not About the Sex. Here we have direct and honest conversations related to compulsive sexual behavior and trauma, all from a sexual health perspective. Our intention is to offer fresh viewpoints and practical strategies toward establishing greater intimacy and a more deeply connected life. Let's begin. Arnold McCuller's passion in the field of recovery has been highlighted by global speaking opportunities, keynote speaker for NA World Conventions, as well as a keynote speaker for Recovery Day Winnipeg, Canada. He is fulfilled by working with adolescents as an interventionist, as well as clients from the entertainment industry. He also enjoys working with families suffering from addiction of loved ones through support and family education. His personal experience and his work experience has lent him to merge his passions and his abilities to create and shape a mission for his life. Today, I want to welcome Arnold McCuller, who is here with us to discuss a lot of different things. He's going to be talking about his background in music, which is quite extensive, but also his current aspirations and his current focus, which is really as an interventionist and as a coach. So welcome, Arnold. So great to have you here today.
Thank you, Andrew. It was wonderful to meet you. We met at a symposium in Los Angeles, and we knew that we wanted to talk more. So I'm glad we got this opportunity.
Exactly. I love that because sometimes we cross paths at these various conferences, symposiums, and whatnot. And this is just an opportunity to continue the conversation and to get to know each other a little bit better. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
I'm wondering if you can start by sharing a little bit about your own recovery history, when and where you got clean and sober.
My recovery began formally November 8th, 1984. And that was I was living in Los Angeles, and I was living in the Silver Lake area of Los Angeles, which is probably called East Hollywood now or something fancy. But I was near Elysian Park. It was just off the Riverside Drive, and I was using pretty heavily there. And the interesting pattern is I would use not so heavily when I was on the road and traveling and touring, but really go in when I'd come off the road because, I had a lot of money in my pocket. And of course, I'd bring all my friends over and get everybody loaded because that would make me feel good. and I used heavily in Silver Lake in Los Angeles and in that area, and got clean there in the same house, and eventually moved out and bought my own place in West Hollywood for the first time at the age of 34.
Wow. And for those who are joining us from outside of Los Angeles, I just want to share that Silver Lake and Elysian Park is very close to Dodger Stadium. That's a very popular place, obviously, if you're a baseball fan.
Or if you're a music fan.
That's true.
Well, Madonna at the stadium. I saw Michael Jackson at Dodger Stadium. I mean, wow, pretty amazing.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. And Dodger Stadium has a certain kind of history and a certain kind of gravitas as a stadium. And I think it's really done very well through the years. It doesn't seem to age in a way that some of the other stadiums around the country have.
It doesn't. I sang the national anthem there twice. And I forgot her name. I think Dorothy was the lady who played organ, and I'm sure she's got to be gone by now. But she had been up there, dun 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 dun, doing that on the da 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 da. There was
exactly
there in playing that. In
That's great.
And she accompanied me once. It was just such a joy.
That's fantastic. What I wanted to circle back to for a second is that when you were on the road, when you were off, performing, you said that you weren't using, but then when you would come home with money and my guess is with some idle time, that
Mhm.
that's when you did use. And I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about that pattern and how you finally broke it.
Well, there was a sense of professionalism, so I didn't want to get too loaded when I was out there working, and I didn't want to put myself in a position to have to come down from a crazy night out unless there was a day off after, then I could just sleep it off the next day. But generally, there was a sense of, obligation to the work and to my voice and to the band. I was obligated to show up and be present for everything. So I tried not to get too high. Mind you, my employer at the time was James Taylor. It's no big secret. He and I got loaded together, and we got loaded together on the road. But he he tried his best not to carry his own drugs, so I was like the guy who would be carrying the drugs for him.
Mm.
Horrible position to be in, but um, he would literally he would get on the bus and say, "You be Holden," or "William B. Holden." We would go do a little code thing. William
Wow.
B. Holden. It was just,
Right. Well, isn't addiction always about keeping secrets, right? So that was one way of keeping a secret. Wow.
yeah.
Oh. One of the things that I learned about you is that the depth of your musical career is quite extensive and impressive. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the meaning of that, the purpose that you carried through the years, and how that was such a significant part of who you are.
Well, both of my parents were singers. My father was a chaplain singer, soloist in World War II in the army, somewhere in Europe, where he was stationed. And I didn't get to know him very well. He died of an aneurysm when I was a year old. I sat at
Mm.
my mother's knee and sang in the choir with her. She sang in the alto section. And I sat and learned parts with her and learned all the parts as I was sitting there. And I just got this indoctrination of just musical stuff that was kind of in my DNA already. My father was an artist as well, and he would paint and he would draw. He wanted to go to art school, and my mother said, "No, you have to get a straight job and take care of this kid and me and take care of your family."
Mm.
And hence, I always thought because of the fact that he couldn't do what he wanted to do or needed to do, it affected his brain, and I don't know. It's just my feeling,
Mhm.
how.
Interesting.
Anyway, so that's what I got from that, and but so I was born into it, and I was a church soloist for years, and I began doing work with the Cleveland Orchestra Chorus.
Mm.
I opened Blossom Music Festival, the summer home of the orchestra chorus, with Robert Crabiel and Leonard Shaw, Bernard Shaw conducting, and I did Berlioz Requiem and Carmina Burana, and I
Mhm.
remember standing in the middle of this choir and just sobbing. The sound around me was just so
Mhm.
intoxicating and so
Mm.
just overtook my soul, and I knew that that was the only thing I wanted to do with my life is
Mhm.
theater.
So I heard you use the word intoxicating, and I wonder how that works because you were so intoxicated, your soul was so touched by music from such a young age, and maybe even genetically in some ways, and and then you had a period of time. I'm curious, about how you ended up turning to alcohol and drugs, and how that became another intoxicant, um, and how that somehow didn't take you down entirely.
It did not, and
Yeah.
oddly enough, I believe it's because it was always connected to work. My first, well, I was using a little before I left Cleveland. In 69, 70, I was 19 years old when I left and joined the national tour of Hair. the Broadway musical Hair. Musical theater was my first introduction to professional singing. I'd been doing some work around town, yeah, granted, but I had a friend who was a dancer who auditioned, who wanted me to come with him to the audition. He said, bring a piece of music, sing. I said, oh, it's crazy. I don't know if I could do that. Okay, I will. So I got a piece of music. I said, Bridge Over Troubled Water. He said,
Mm,
do a soft shoe. And I said, yeah, I can do a soft shoe. And I did a soft shoe. And they said, you're fired. So I was like,
wow.
my friend didn't get in, um,
Interesting.
who asked me to come along with. So there were 200 people who showed up for the audition. I was the only Black person hired. There were 4 people from Cleveland that were hired in that group of 200 people. And I was dumbfounded by it.
Hmm.
What
Hmm.
kind of crazy luck is this, you know? And I went on the road. 19 years old. I didn't know anything about traveling or road life or anything, you know. I had a lot of friends who were smart and who kept me, and I read quite a bit, but I didn't really know what it was going to be like. And I learned how to use on the road in Hair. We would, do mescaline, and we would do pot, and we would do some psychedelics. And, that was basically all we did as kids back in the day. And it wasn't until I finished that and moved to New York that I started discovering other drugs. And I was a big part of the disco scene. I sang on a lot of disco records. I'm a native New Yorker. That song by Odyssey and my friends are all on the Chic records. And we a lot of times we would beef up the vocals of the groups. I sang with the Ramones at one point. I've sung on so many different kinds of projects and so many different kinds of artists. I sang on jazz records. I sang in commercials. I sang on just everything, and film, a lot of film beats, and that kind of work projected me to Los Angeles. I got asked to sing in a film called American Hot Wax, the first film Jay Leno did, Fran Drescher, and everybody in the music industry, old and new, were involved in this musical about the guy who coined the phrase rock and roll, Alan Freed, out of Cleveland, Ohio, oddly enough. So it was just like this crazy universal circle that always followed me. And so I got to be in that movie, and I said, I'm packing my things up, packed up my records and my clothes, and left my apartment to a friend in New York, $295 a month on the Upper Side,
Wow.
railroad apartment,
Right.
2 bedrooms, just the best apartment ever. I kick myself, to this day for not having kept it and bought it, because it would have been a nice place to have gone back to. Anyway, so
Hmm.
theater, then recordings and concerts,
Hmm.
touring, and all that.
It would be really easy for me to just focus on your background as a musician. And maybe we can either on or off the
Yeah.
podcast at some point. But what I'm really interested in as well is how the transitioning started to happen, because I know you became a vocal coach at some point, and really, in a sense, you were giving back what you had been given. And so I'm wondering if you can start by talking about that, because it sounds like that set a tone for you in some ways.
It made me realize that I could teach something to people, that I had something that was teachable, and that people wanted to know how I did it and how I managed my voice, how I took care of it. And I had studied voice for years with this guy named Keith Davis out of New York, and his students were a guy named Nolan Van Way, who was a Broadway guy, theater guy, and then another guy who worked with Michael Jackson and Stevie Wonder. Seth Riggs was like the famous vocal coach. So these are my teachers. So they were the guys who showed me how to. There's a book called Your Voice that Keith wrote that's just shows you what it is, how it works, what not to do, what to drink, what not to drink, how to breathe was the most important thing. I took lessons for 7 years from Nolan, and I said, well, these lessons, and Nolan was dying. And I'm like, I got to put these things, these cassettes somewhere and then create them. So I made my own app with lessons that he had given me. And I was the first person to do an app. It was like 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago. It wasn't a huge
Wow.
deal, but I had an app that people could carry around and go warm up with on a
Mm,
cassette player or whatever. That was the beginning of my teaching or wanting to teach. And another thing, I saw a lot of friends were working in the field and I saw that they were helping people stop using. And I had an experience on the road not too many years ago that one of the crew members, the drummer, had a son who was an opiate addicted guy. And he just brought him on the road, got him a job as a crew member to keep an eye on him and to keep him out of trouble. Well, it didn't work so
mhm,
well. When he would get to a major city, he was found in this tenderloin of San Francisco, all high, and or he'd get to Chicago and he'd always get loaded, or he'd get, in the small towns he would stay clean. And we would actually go to meetings with him. But
mm,
man, one day he bottomed out in a horrible way, and they called me. They said, "Arnold, what should we do?" I said, "I'll get a guy. I'll get a guy to transport him. Once we get to LA, he'll take the bus with us." I mean, I had a plan. He'll take the bus with us. We'll keep him in your room. Won't be with the crew anymore because
mhm,
he's a danger to the crew. And we've got a guy who'll pick him up and take him to recovery house. I've called the house. They're ready for him. Got transport and all that. And I did it like thinking it was just the thing to do. I didn't realize that I was actually doing the job that I'd been studying to do. I had books with me. I was Brining Institute had a little course about, drug and alcohol course, and I was studying like crazy. And I knew what to do. I knew how to help him. And I realized that
mhm.
that's very rewarding. And it's very, not only just rewarding, but it's kind of what we need more of. We need the guy who looks like
Right,
me, who has my history, who has my whatever going on for him, that someone would
right.
possibly trust enough with their life.
Say more about how you knew what to do, because what I heard you saying really is that you had intuition and you had this gut feeling of how to help this person even before you knew what the books told you to do, right? So can you say more about that evolution?
Well, by that time, I'd had over probably 30 years of recovery, 3 or 4 sponsors and a number of sponsees. So I'm always in the recovery mode. I'm in the mode of recovery and helping people come into the rooms. And now I'm learning how to help people get into just rehab or so yeah, I knew what to do in the sense that I knew that his pain was more that he realized and that his disease was um more than he could handle, I should say. And
Mm,
and he didn't he oh I can handle this was what we say a lot. I'll be okay. I won't let this happen again. But it was happening repeatedly so many times. And this time, this guy was doing it back to back. He was just falling down a number of times on the road. And it was just, like I said, a jeopardy to the tour itself. And we had to get him help right away.
part of what I hear you sharing, and this is so important, is that the depth of your own history, the depth of empathy that you had for this gentleman, the depth of identification that you had for him, he had for you, were some of the ingredients that transcend any academic kind of understanding, really.
Thank you for saying that, because that's the hardest part to realize that those of us who are in the field, we've got to come from that place first. We need the tools. We need to know how to do, an assessment. We know which tools to use for the assessment. We need to know which tools to use for, the ASAMs and all that stuff. And we need to know how to case manage a client. But moreover, we need to know from, I guess, our hearts how it feels to be a human being in this position without anyone to help them and without any tools. So I think that is what I feel as though I have innately is the tools.
So, speaking of tools, I'm wondering if you can share a little bit more about the direction you've been on professionally, because I know that interventions are a big focus of what you do nowadays. But I also know that there's a part of you that is available as a recovery coach and is as a counselor. And so I'm wondering if you can bring that together, because I think you have a very particular blend of skills and native talent.
The interventions began full on when I was during the pandemic. I had a sponsee brother. We were on a Zoom call. All the sponsees were with our sponsor, just talking about life in 2020, 2021, and how we're managing it and staying clean and staying sober. And one of my sponsee brothers, Ken, was starting a company called IntelliKey Recovery. And he said, we're just starting this company. We're ground level. I know you can do this work. I know who you are, and I know your heart. I know your capabilities, and I know you'd be good at this. And I know you're studying to, get credentialed. And as I was telling you earlier, IntelliKey means the realization of potential. So knowing that it's hard for people to understand, and then you always have to say it's the realization of potential. It's a Greek word. I think it is, but it's a philosophy. Yeah, it's Greek originally. So it's a philosophy, and I thought it was a beautiful philosophy. And I joined Ken and Bruce, and we just got into it. I ended up going on doing interventions with them, co-chairing, I guess. And we had successes. We had a number of successes back to back. And then I started doing them on my own, and I was having some success. And I said, well, I know what it was. IntelliKey was sort of not doing well, and they said, well, we're going to take you off the website. And I said, well, okay. And we're going to take so-and-so off the website, and we're just going to do, Bruce and I are going to do this on our own. Fine. You guys do what you have to do for your business. I think I'm going to try and start my own thing. And I started AM Recovery. My initials, thinking also that, grand rising, rise up from, whatever it is that that happened at night, or in the nighttime comes the daylight, and AM Recovery. And I started that, and I put myself singing on the cover, on the card, because I didn't want to negate my history. I wanted to bring the fact that vocal coaching can be helpful also to a client who has no access to their spirit. Is kind of like sound healing, or sound bowls or any other sound healing. Yeah. I thought vocal coaching could actually do a part in a group session or one-to-one as well. Teaching people to sing in a choir, sing on mass, just hold a note, hold a tone, and see how that resonates in the body and how it shifts and changes, maybe bring up some emotion, So anyway, these are things I still want to do more of, but it's, from IntelliKey to AM Recovery, and, I'm on the road doing all the stuff that we do to promote ourselves, which is really, really rare and difficult for me. Because as an artist, you didn't have to do that. You would just walk on stage and sing your song and say, this is who I am, what I've done, and how I've prepared, and here's, my heart is opening to you, be a song. But I can't just walk into a home and do that. I have to have tools, and I have to have preparation, and I can't walk into a recovery house and do that. It's just very different. And selling myself is so hard to do. It's just so.
But it sounds like it's not only a new chapter of your life, but it's a way of embodying what truly your passions and your purpose are all about. And so it's I hope that over time, Arnold, it can really be easier and easier because talking with you and getting to know you, you do have an ease about you. I feel very at ease and very regulated as I talk with you. And so I have no doubt that people you come in contact with will have that same reaction. I do have a question about the word success, and it's kind of a naive question, but when you talk about a success situation around interventions, what qualifies that experience as a success?
I would say just to be able to make a living at it, to make a living and to feel comfortable and to know that can also feed me, you know? I mean, I'm doing everything
Yeah.
now. I will sometimes work in a recovery house. You know, I've done that enough to know how to do that as well. I'll go in and do just sort of tech work in a recovery house, a small house. I've been working at a house called Recovery First, which is just for first responders and police, and usually two or three guys. And I get to sit down and talk to them and tell them how doesn't have to be something you do over and over. You can get this now and go out and really have a nice, wonderful life, create a family, fight fires, and serve the country, serve your people, or whatever you guys do. And but you know, I love pulling them aside and have the one-on-one with them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that sounds just super meaningful. The term recovery coach sometimes is misunderstood. And I'm wondering, it's so interesting to me that you went from vocal coaching to recovery coaching. How do you define recovery coaching in terms of what you offer the clients that you work with?
Um, I'd started, I guess people were calling it sober coach at first, you know. What can I do to help a person stop drinking? Or what can I do to help a person stop using? Well, by on a day-to-day basis, have them be accountable to you. So coaching them through life. Oh my God, my daughter's sick, and it's one of those times where I just don't know what to do. And first thing I think of is picking up a drug or picking up a bottle, or I can't pay the bills. And the first thing I do is, we talk through life on life's terms and how these things will come up and how they can find ways to, maybe we'll find another way to pay the bill, or we'll find another doctor to take care of your daughter or whatever it is. But there's never, ever, ever a reason to pick up. So that's the main point of coaching on a day-to-day, because it can go away if you've been in a recovery house for 30 days and then you come out, you're out for 30, 60 days, and then you don't have kind of forgotten. It's kind of in the distance. But someone who's talking to them on a regular, maybe a Zoom call, once or twice a week, but a regular text or a phone call is great. So I consider that to be recovery coaching.
Sure. And I heard a focal point of accountability. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. I also just wanted to mention that I know you have some involvement and you've had involvement with various organizations and programs. I noticed this retreat up off of not too far from Portland called Tailor Made Retreat. That sounds great. We don't have time to go into a lot of detail, but if you could talk a little bit about that. I also noticed the organization called Harmonium that you've been a part of, and what I was taking from that, by the way, is really being of service and giving back, and it really shows, Arnold, that that's a core of who you are and what you bring to the field.
Yeah. I met a guy, one of the board members of Harmonium, and Harmonium is an organization that sets up recovery tents at huge concerts. And I was on the road still with James Taylor. I said, why don't we have a Harmonium table for people who are sober or clean, who are in these concerts and around a lot of people drinking, that they could stop and make a donation to, that. And they did that, and it was wonderful. And Tailor Made was brought to me by an intervention. Actually, I was working with a father and his son and their family. And the father said, I'm on the board of this place called TaylorMade. I've been trying to get, David or whatever his name was into this place. And he's very resistant. So we got him in, and I became a board member because the owner of the place, he and I clicked, and he was a concert promoter. It's just this constant circle. He was a concert promoter and knew me and knew my work. I was doing a Lyle Lovett gig, and outside of Portland, he was there when the crew buses caught fire. It was a big deal. It was like, so he knew a lot of my history, and we just clicked. We're still very close friends. I'm going to go up there and do a gala for them and sing a song in September.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
We're almost out of time for this conversation. Almost. But I have a question for you, because this is what I like to end with. If you were to share just a few takeaways that you would like our listeners to keep in mind from today's episode, what might those takeaways be?
It's not nearly as bad as you think. I mean, we can think ourselves into just these horrible places, and we can think that we'll never get out of them. And it's not, first of all, it's not as bad as you think, and it's definitely going to change tomorrow. So be in the space and willing to allow yourself to move through whatever is happening in your life, and just let it happen. Let the feelings come, and know that it's not all that bad, and that it'll change tomorrow without a doubt.
It always does.
It always does.
Yeah. Well, on that piece of wisdom, thank you so much for being with us today, Arnold. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you, Andrew.
And one way or the other, I'm sure our paths will continue to cross. I look forward to that.
Okay.
And you take really good care. Thanks for listening today. It was so terrific sharing the time with my colleague, Arnold McCuller, and discussing this really meaningful topic. He can be reached through his website at www.arnoldmcculler.com, and that's spelled McCuller. If you're so inclined, please give us a 5-star rating, and be sure to subscribe and share my podcast with those who may benefit. I look forward to you joining us the next time, and don't forget to stay connected.